Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Ricada of Ricada Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And with me today is a very, very special guest. Let me introduce you to Mr. Jeff Younger.
How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
All right. Good to be here.
Actually, I don't want to start off with a dishonest answer. I'm pretty okay, but I had a really annoying day.
Oh my goodness. I kind of did too.
Well, mine was all little annoying, those little petty annoyances, a
Yes.
bunch of little things building up. But other than that, I'm good. What about yours? Was yours like?
Mine was
mundane?
basically coming to the realization that my legal options trying to overcome these temporary orders are basically non-existent. So I'm looking at a year to 2 years of never seeing my sons again.
So you have real issues, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Mine were these little minor petty things, but you're in actual legal calamity that affects you at a deep personal level.
Yes, it's look, I'm very close to my sons, and all of a sudden I can't talk to them at all. I don't get notified of anything. So
yeah,
I have a visitation that in Texas would be given to a serious sex offender or to someone who was a murderer or a rapist. That's the visitation that they gave me.
Yeah, and that's something I was hoping we could talk about going forward, because it's a very confusing thing looking at this case from the outside. And I've been trying to do some catch up on it, but as Texas courts seem to want to do lately in high profile family law cases, they don't want the public looking in on the proceedings. They want gag orders. They want things sealed. And so that's the new order. The day.
And that's kind of what got me into trouble. I basically realized that I had a successful trial. I won equal parental rights. Miss Georgialis's, my son's mother's rights were curtailed, and we kind of could check each other. She couldn't go and do anything medically to my son, and the counselors working with the judges have completely undermined the jury verdict and the previous judge's order, and it's reached a point now where they've taken everything away from me.
Yeah, and it's mind-blowing because, like you said, typically, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's a lawyer down in Texas today, kind of about your situation, and I was mentioning that, he gets basically no custody at all unless you opt to pay for the supervised visitation, which would be at a separate location. It's not like you get visitation at your house. You have to pay to go to a center. Yes. And these are the things that they do to parents who have physically and mentally abused their children.
That's right.
And not even all of them, only like actual verified offenders. And
Correct.
so my friend was like, well, what did he do? And I was like, I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen any evidence or even argument. And I was like, you got to understand this.
Here's what I did. Here's what I did. It's very simple. I have been complaining for the last year and a half that the Dr. Susan Fletcher, who's my son's counselor, court-appointed counselor, I've been complaining that she only sees James when he comes from his mother's home. And she makes a big point to put him in dress and high heels and everything when he goes. And I said, it's clinically significant that he presents as a boy with me, and you're just not seeing that. It's been a year and a half. Right. So I got visitation for 1 month in July, and I scheduled 2 appointments with her during that time. And during those appointments, 4 times during those 2 appointments, my son told her that he wants to be a boy all the time, and most importantly, he wants to go to school this year as a boy. She did not respond to him. She did not write anything down. She did not take notes. She gave him no feedback at all that she had even heard him, and she just moved on and ignored him. So he came to me, and he has an Apple Watch. He came to me and he says, well, I want to record myself telling her that I want to be a boy so I can come show you that I have done that. Like I'm telling people. And I said, okay, that's your prerogative. I mean, in Texas, it's a one-party recording state, and you can go record. And I told him not to hide anything and to be open about it. And he went in there and did that, and she completely freaked out over that. And I think what she freaked out over, she's afraid that other sessions were recorded.
Right.
And so she said that the children were very afraid of disobeying me for making that recording. And she called CPS and made a report on me. And on that basis, they took my kids away. So let me be a mandamus attorney right quick. I'm a jailhouse attorney now. I'm like a jailhouse lawyer.
Right.
I've been in the system for 7 years now. I've been under temporary orders for 7 years. So, here's how I would argue this on mandamus. I would never win in the Fifth Circuit here, but it would go something like this. Let's assume all the facts that I presented to you are as Dr. Fletcher said. They're actually said that they were afraid, maybe even very afraid, of disobeying me and taking that recording. That's not abuse.
No.
Children are afraid of disobeying their parents all the time, right? That's not even abuse. So, but still, on the basis, despite that, on its face, even if we accept all the facts, there's no abuse. They still took my children completely away from me. I don't even get notified of medical issues. My son could have surgery. Anything could happen to him. They don't have to notify me if he dies.
Yeah, there's two levels or two portions of custody. They're labeled differently in different states. In Minnesota, you have physical custody and you have legal custody. Mm-hmm. Physical custody is where the child's primary residence is, mm-hmm. and their day-to-day sort of care. Legal custody is religion, doctor, school, like basically. Okay. That's it. And even in custody cases where you have severe disagreements, even potential abuse between spouses, and even abuse of children, the legal decisions are rarely stripped from one party. I mean, they can be given up, but yes. the state is hesitant to strip those from the parties because, if you have any visitation at all, they want to let you make, they want you to be able to make medical decisions, and they really want parents typically to cooperate, even if one parent has primary custody. That's so right. It's again, seeing the order was absolutely mind blowing to me because I'm looking for any finding from the court that justifies it. But one of the nasty things that a lot of people don't realize about family court, and I'm sure you do at this point, because you're talking about if you were petitioning the appeals court and it wouldn't go through, is you can try and appeal a trial court judge's decisions, but what the appeals court does is it defer to the evidence and the character determinations that the trial court judge made. So if the question is a matter of who does the trial court judge trust, well, the appeals court's going to defer to the trial court judge 10 times out of 10. Time.
And the one of the things that I keep encountering is temporary orders of use. I've been under temporary orders for 7 years. That's not temporary. Right. And all of those temporary orders curtail very important constitutional and civil rights that I possess in this country. Right. And so that's one of the reasons why I just decided I was just going to violate the gag orders. And I was going to speak out because I wanted to pass a law in the state to outlaw these barbaric practices that they're doing in these gender clinics here in Texas. We had a minor success a couple days ago. The Department of Family and Protective Services, which has CPS in it, has formally determined that sex change surgeries on kids is in fact child abuse. Right. And that's a big deal. But it took me 4 years to get that. And I lost my kids doing it because I refused to shut up about this stuff. And I used my case as an example of how little kids are being sucked into this system. The other thing is that besides just the temporary orders thing, is temporary orders are not appealable, at least in Texas. Right. It's a mandamus standard. I don't think a lot of people understand what that means, right? It's moving from an abuse of discretion standard to a clear abuse of discretion. So that means just on a facial reading of the facts, it should be abusive to the judge reading it. It's an extremely high standard. I've won one mandamus as a pro se in my previous trial, but like 99.9% of those things are rejected, and a lot of them come out of family court. In Texas, almost all of the mandamus requests come out of family court, and they're all over temporary orders. And what it amounts to is that our appeals courts are not supervising the circuit courts. Their job is to supervise them, make sure that they're not doing anything wrong. That's what mandamus is for. But they basically said if it comes out of family court, we're not going to hear it. We're not going to touch it. We're going to let them do whatever they want.
Right. And there's no federal relief either, because the feds leave it to the family court is like the last bastion of states' autonomy that's left in our legal system. And so the feds are hesitant to touch anything related to it. But let's back up. Let's back up and do this. Let's kind of start with your story. Okay. And because there are people in the audience, and we've started pretty far into the legal battle, but your story with this starts a very long time ago. So can you kind of walk us through this? I guess it's going to start with you were married to Anne quite a while ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we were married in 2010. Her name is Ann Georgial. She's a pediatrician in Coppell, Texas. We dated for about a year, got married. We about halfway into our marriage of 5 years, we had children together. We had to use an egg donor because Ann was just a little bit too old to make that real. So we got an egg donor. She's not genetically even related to the boys.
Right.
She doesn't carry any of their they don't carry any of her genetic material. And I do think that figures into a lot of the way she thinks about these kids. When the boys were about 2.5, she started putting James into timeouts. Well, first of all, I've never had to even put my boys into timeouts. Like, I don't have a lot of discipline issues with my kids. In fact, I don't have any. And so it's strange that she was always putting James into timeouts, first of all. And when she would put him into timeouts, she would say things like, "Don't be a boy, the monsters only eat boys," and scaring him about being a boy, these sorts of things. And I put my foot down about that. And when I did that, her whole attitude just like completely changed. She began having she had 2 daughters. Another thing about this is I thought she had 2 adopted daughters, but she lied to me about that. Once I got married to her for about a year, I found out that one of her daughters was from a sperm donor. And her other daughter was adopted, but from her brother, who was a 3-time convicted felon in California, who had exposed the child to methamphetamine in the womb. So I was entering into a family situation I was completely unprepared for. That was a big warning sign for me. You'd think I would have thought twice about having children, but that's what love will do to you. So my son's going into these timeouts. When I start pushing back on that, she starts taking the girls out, and they have these secret meetings that would last 4 or 5 hours. And they'd come back and just do very strange things. Like one time they came home and just surrounded the boys and wouldn't let me touch the boys or be with the boys. Very strange. And then eventually she filed for divorce and forced me out of the house, saying that I was psychologically bad for her daughters, and her daughters said they were depressed when I was in the house. So I moved about a mile away. By this time, my sons are about 3 years old. After I moved out and was living a mile away, and we're having 50-50 custody with the kids, I think it was a 2-2-5 schedule. My son came to me, James, and he started telling me that he was a girl. Okay. And so I whipped out my iPhone. I took the first iPhone video I ever took. I mean, if you go onto YouTube, you can search for it. Just search for "Mommy Says I'm a Girl." And I said, "Well, why do you think you're a girl?" And he says, "Because Mommy says I'm a girl." And then I realized what she was doing. My opposition to this began to grow. Remember, we're not divorced yet. And I tried to reason with Ann.
So how old was James at this time?
3.
Okay. So this goes way back. when he's a toddler to a
Yes.
preschooler.
Yes. And in sworn testimony at our last trial, Miss Georgelis said that it was because James chose a girl's toy at McDonald's.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm not making that up.
I read that and I was like, you've got to be kidding. That has, look, you don't know too much about me. I don't think. I have 5 kids, and and I, my girls sometimes want boys' toys from McDonald's, and my boys sometimes will want girls' toys. If it's depending on what the toys are, if it's like a popular Disney movie or something, they're gonna pick the popular thing. That has nothing to do with how they feel about their identity.
That's right.
I mean, to even propose it is ludicrous.
It's completely ridiculous. She began to socially transition him during this period. Now, at that time, we had a custody evaluator, and a truly awful man named Blake Mitchell, who has an office in both Frisco and on Preston Road in Dallas. He's a custody evaluator for the courts. They only use like 8 or 9 custody evaluators for the courts in Dallas County, because those are the guys that give the answers that the judges want. So this guy, he asked me, like, what is your biggest issue? And I said, my biggest issue is that she's tampering with James's gender identity.
Right.
I showed him this video. She's cross-dressing him. I've got pictures of her cross-dressing him. When I go and pick him up, she's sending him out in a dress, okay? I show him all this. None of that appears in his report. None of it's in his report. And in fact, he said, I made a false accusation of tampering with James's gender identity, and on that basis gave me less than standard possession.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how my divorce ended. Now, the judge desperately wanted to break the prenuptial agreement and make me pay Miss Georgelis $100,000. So what she found is that I committed marital fraud and annulled a marriage of 5 years with 2 kids.
Right.
Making my children illegitimate in the process.
So I wanted to, if you're open to talking about that, I wanted to ask kind of about the marital fraud, because I was reading up a little bit on it, and there were allegations that basically you misrepresented your education, you misrepresented some military experience, and maybe misrepresented income or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope everybody can get a hold of the findings of fact from that case, because those findings to me illustrate the corruption in family court better than any other document that I have ever seen. So we had a prenuptial agreement, and in that prenuptial agreement, we disclosed all of our financial assets, all of our real assets, previous employment for 7 years, previous addresses for 10 years, and we supplied our driver's license number, social security number, so that we could each run background checks on each other, which we did do.
Right.
Okay. Now, keep in mind, given all of that we just did, the court found that I misled her about my financial assets.
Yeah, that seems kind of hard to do unless they were to find, fraud in the actual disclosure.
You're right.
But it's like
the fraud that they found there was that I told her I was making more money than I actually did. So again, I didn't do that. I actually I always tell people I make less money than I actually make, including her. But let's assume that was the case. That's not a basis for marital fraud. She said that I wasn't in the military, so I had to produce my DD Form 214s from the 1980s. She accused me of being a homophobe. Unfortunately for her, I went to jail for gay rights when I was in the military, because there was a cook in the 45th Company at the Airborne School when I was at the Airborne School who had been given a dishonorable discharge for being gay. And I don't know if you know, but a dishonorable discharge is like way worse than even a federal felony conviction. I mean, you're basically going to have to live homeless in this country after that. You can't rent, you can't get a job, you can't have any licensure for the rest of your life. I don't even think you get Social Security benefits if you get a dishonorable discharge.
Wow.
So it's a terrible thing. So I led a protest across the street from the base, At one point, I crossed the street to throw some trash away into a trash bin, and I crossed onto the sidewalk that was on the side of where the base was. And this is Fort Benning. And they said that I had therefore led a protest on base. And on that basis, they put me in jail for consorting with homosexuals in a protest on base. So, you know, people call me a homophobe. I always ask them, have you gone to jail for gay rights? Because I have, you know.
Sure.
I didn't sweat it. I went to a military jail where I was in prison at hard labor, and I didn't sweat it because I knew it was the right thing to do.
How long did they? How long did they confine you for that?
6 weeks until they decided it was just going to be an administrative punishment, and I got an Article 15. I had a whole bunch of Article 15s for fighting. I didn't get a good conduct medal. I was in the infantry, and I fought constantly. I mean, I was in fights every day. But
how long were you in the military? Because that was the point of contention in the
because they discharged after this little incident. They discharged me. They gave me an honorable discharge, and I was in for about 2 years.
Okay.
So the other thing that came up was, what was it? We did the money thing. We did the money thing also. They used my tax returns, and they looked at my tax transcripts, not my returns. And they said, well, your transcripts say you only made $60,000. You didn't make $180,000 like you said. I'm like, yeah, in Hong Kong, you know, and there's like $120,000 exemption. You don't pay income tax on foreign income until you pass 120. I think it's higher now. I think it's 160,000 now. So
yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say this. I mean, I don't mean this. I kind of like the judge because she gave a favorable ruling, but this is not a judge with the highest IQ. I don't think this judge understood the tax exemption, and I think she didn't really want to understand it. What she really wanted to do was to annul this marriage so that there would be no prenup. And then she gave me a $100,000. Well, she said it was a $50,000 judgment, but I also had to give up assets, so it was a $100,000 judgment to Ms. Georgelis.
Okay, so
and more importantly to me, it made my children illegitimate and born out of wedlock.
Right. So okay, so in the annulment, that was, you got $100,000 judgment against you, but that was a more favorable outcome
than what I got now. Yeah, way more favorable than what I have now. No question. I would happily pay $100,000 and get my kids back. Sure.
Right. Okay, so that happens what, when the kids are about 5, right?
Yes, they're about 5 years old. Yeah.
Okay. And maybe we should cover this. You have twin boys.
Yeah, they're twins. They're not identical, but they are twins. Yeah. I think something else that's important about the trial, the original divorce proceeding. One of my favorite findings of fact from that the judge gave. The judge found that she knew what I was going to do in the future. One of the findings of fact is Mr. Younger will do and say anything to get his own way. So she knows what I'm going to do even in the future. It's just a fascinating read. You should definitely read them if you get a chance to read these findings.
Jeff, do you happen to have headphones?
I don't have headphones. Are you having trouble hearing me?
No, there's for some reason the echo cancellation stopped working.
Oh, right. Let me see if I can use my Apple. I haven't ever hooked these up to my computer, but I probably could try. Let me try that.
Okay, if we could do that real quick. I was thinking of taking a really snarky approach and just screaming at the chat and asking if there was an echo, since 500 people told me about it. But I figured we'll keep it a little civil and see if I
can get this done here.
It's not me echo. I know I'm echoing, but I'm echoing through his microphone.
Okay. Hang on, I'm trying to get it to discover.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. This might also help. There's some loud sound. I don't know what that was coming from, but it almost sounded like thunder or someone breathing directly into a mic, which I know you're not doing because I can't even see your microphone. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Hang on one sec. I think I'm gonna have to turn off Bluetooth on my phone because these things are connected here.
Yep. We're getting there, guys. 1 second.
Sorry.
No worries. Not a problem. It wasn't happening for the longest time. It just switched randomly and started echoing. So you're actually relatively okay. I was hoping it would just stop. So real quick before the show, Micah sent a chat that just says, "As promised, a pizza." Well, thank you, Micah, for the pizza. I really appreciate that. That's wonderful.
Well, I can't seem to get these two pair right now. I'm not sure what's going on. Hang on.
Well, this is the way of the world. For some reason, the echo has stopped, though.
Has it?
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I never, I don't know. There's nothing.
Maybe a streaming issue. Yeah.
Yeah. The stream software is handled. You know what's weird? You took them out and now it's echoing again.
It's echoing again?
Yeah. God, what a strange thing, because they weren't working.
No, they weren't. They're not even connected.
Is your microphone like really close to your speakers, or?
Somewhat. I might be able to move it closer to me. Now you can kind of see it. Is that better?
Maybe. I don't know. Is that a Yeti mic or something that you have?
It's a shotgun mic. It is, I don't know the brand name. It looks like Audio Technics.
Okay. Actually, I think there is much better. It might have just been picking up some residual stuff.
Okay, cool. So. I can even get it closer if that's what you want. How's that?
Yeah, let's try that for now.
Okay, good.
Okay, here we go.
Because I was leaning forward into the mic as I was putting these things together. There we go.
Could be. Veridicon sent a chat in that says, "Jeff, as someone whose mother is a psychopath, raised me to believe my dad was an offender of children. I've known my dad since I was 18. It's been 13 years since that time. He's a good guy. Stay strong, man."
Thanks. I appreciate that. I need to hear stuff like that right now because I'm getting kind of down about it.
Yeah. Well, let's get back into the story. So the kids are about 5. You just had the marriage annulled, and then I assume at that point is custody resolved by the annulment, or do you have to then fight for custody at that point?
So at that point, I went on with the possession schedule I had. You have to understand, I've never filed a lawsuit against her. I've always tried to resolve these things outside of court, because once it goes to court, man, you just lose total control of everything. It really came to a head when she began to take him to school as a girl, and the school decided that they were not going to call my son by his legal name. And it got so bad that when I took my son to school as a boy on Mondays, the teacher would give him a dress. I mean, it got that bad. So at that point, I started really pushing back again. And I went after the school, and I stopped playing nice. At that point, that's the point at which I decided I was going to stop playing nice.
Right.
And frankly, I didn't really even then want to get divorced. I wanted to try to stay married and try to raise our children, even though she was crazy. But I gave up on that at that point as well. And I tried to go after the teachers and tell the teachers to stop abusing my son by teaching him that he's a girl. And there was a period of time there where he really didn't know whether to believe me, because his teacher, his principal, the police officer at school, the librarian, the lunch lady, his mom, they all told him he was a girl. And I was the only one telling him he wasn't. Me and his priest were the only ones saying he wasn't a girl. So he really just didn't believe me for a long time. As this escalated, she decided to file another case to remove all of my parental rights, because I was just causing her so much trouble with my son at school.
Right.
This ramped up to a jury trial that happened in 2019. And at the 255th District Court in Dallas, Texas, the worldwide greatest experts in transgender medicine showed up at a courtroom on both sides of the issue. And on my side, I had Dr. Levine, who was one of the founders of the first clinic at Johns Hopkins. And just to let you know, Back in the 70s, they started doing this transgender medicine thing back in the 70s. The clinics were shut down within 4 years because all the studies showed that their treatments were actually harming patients, and they could prove it. So they shut all these clinics down and stopped those treatments. They've been resurrected now, and they use the old science, but they're not using the statistical methods that were used then, and they've reinterpreted those studies. On the other side, we have people like Johanna Olsen Kennedy, who in a deposition admitted to me that she had referred over 200 pubescent girls for total mastectomies. And she said more pubescent boys. She didn't know the exact number, but it was more pubescent boys for removal of the testicles.
Wow.
Yeah. So they actually declined to put any of their experts on the stand in front of the jury because this stuff was pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, you tell that to a Texas jury.
Yeah, it's not going to go well. Not going to go well.
Even in a liberal area of Texas, they're going to have problems with that kind of question.
Right. So we had been given another custody evaluator, truly terrible man, who even worse than Blake Mitchell, a guy named Benjamin Albritton. And this guy produced another one of these reports and recommended that my son be transitioned to a girl. So in the previous divorce, I had Blake Mitchell, the psychologist in my divorce. I had his report struck because it was clearly full of lies. Then Benjamin Albritton, we impeached him on the stand and destroyed him because he was saying things that were completely inconsistent with the American Psychological Association's DSM-5, and it was internally inconsistent. We made a mockery of this guy, which is why the judge and the jury totally ignored his recommendations. Dr. Levine, I paid a lot of money for him as an expert witness.
I'd imagine so. I mean, with his qualifications.
Extremely eminent. He's the man who went to the UK and testified and shut down all the gender clinics in the UK. He's extremely well regarded in the scientific community, and it's hard to combat his experience. I mean, he has more experience with transgender medicine than anyone in the world right now. He just made mincemeat of Dr. Albritton and demonstrated that he actually didn't know even the definition of gender dysphoria. He had an improper understanding of it and had misdiagnosed James. So there's all this stuff going on. What you also need to know is that leading up to that trial, Miss Georgiles had taken my son to a gender clinic here in Dallas and attempted to enroll him in there. And in the medical records, it shows that they intended to chemically castrate him at 8 and put him on cross-sex hormones at 10, which would permanently sterilize him. So I narrowly avoided that with the verdict that I got in the trial. The final judgment said that we would have equal conservator rights, which you call legal rights, I guess, in
right
where you're at, and that I would go through some counseling on 9 points, and these are things like unconditionally loving your children, recognizing the signs of bullying, understanding the effects of publicity that might have on the children later on. It's like 9 points like that.
Right. So
and the court said that once I do that, I would get 50-50 custody and no child support.
Was this after the Save James sort of hashtag picked up, or was this before that?
All the run up to that 2019 trial, the Save James people had gotten active, and we had a massive media presence at trial, which of course, changes the behavior of judges. They are on their best behavior when they're being watched. They don't want to commit felonies when there's 50 witnesses in the court. Right.
They don't want to do that. I've seen some judges make some very bad decisions when there's media present, but it's bad legal decisions, not like nefarious decisions.
Right.
But no. So, okay. The reason I was asking is just because you mentioned the counseling on the 9 points. One of them was the publicity thing.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just get a feel for the timeline.
So what happened was, the amicus attorney, that's another thing. I've had to pay my attorney plus the court's attorney. We have amicus attorneys down here. Mm-hmm. The amicus attorney appointed the counselor. The counselor then appointed another counselor, which was nowhere contemplated in the order. And then they've never once covered even 1 point of those 9 points, and have spent a year and a half making me spend upwards of $30,000 to not get 50-50 custody. And they did everything they could to prevent it. Finally, we reached July and we're back to where we started in the beginning. The psychologist, Dr. Susan Fletcher, fabricates this abuse story just because my kids say that they're afraid of disobeying me. And next thing you know, I don't have my kids anymore. It was all done by the counselors in cahoots with the judge. That's how they got me.
Okay, so one of the accusations that came up in this recent order, or I think one of the findings, is that they said you failed to comply with the counseling or something like that. Is that right? Is that accurate?
There are two occasions. One of the problems that I've had with Dr. Susan Fletcher from the beginning, and it was a real warning sign for me. From the very beginning, she refused to refer to my son by his legal name. She would only refer to him as Luna, his fake girl's name.
Right.
And the findings of fact from the previous trial are very clear. I have two boys by gender. It finds that the gender of my children is a boy. That's res judicata. It's
not just the biological sex. The actual
it also
gender.
determines that they are of the male sex. And it also determines that their names are Jude and James Younger. Okay. She would not abide by the order and call my sons by their legal names. So I had a real problem with that. And sure enough, after I let her see my sons for a couple months, I asked her, are you affirming James as a girl in your sessions? Because another problem here is that the sessions are secret. The court doesn't let me know what's going on. These sessions are not recorded, and I'm not allowed to ask my children what happened in the sessions. So it's secret counseling, and it's some stranger talking to my children. So I asked her in one of our family counseling sessions, are you affirming my son as a girl? And she said, yes. And I said, that's child abuse, and I don't consent to you seeing my sons anymore.
Right.
That's when they filed to remove my parental rights again, saying that I violated the court order because I'm not letting my kids go to counseling.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing, because the court didn't order gender affirming counseling, did they?
It ordered me to go through 9 points of counseling, personal counseling.
Right. So
and
why
the counselors manufactured all this just to take my kids away from me? This is all done in a kind of typical family court way, where the experts all get together, decide what outcome they want, and then they just manipulate facts to get there.
So were the kids ordered to counseling too then, as part of that thing? Because
no,
it sounds
not
like
as part of the order, not as part of the judgment. That came later when the counselor that was supposed to do the 9 points asked the judge to appoint another counselor for the kids. Later, I found out the reason for that. Linda Threets, who was the family counselor, who was supposed to do this 9 points with me, lost her licensed marriage and family counseling license for HIPAA violations.
Oh, good.
So she was operating under her social worker license and didn't feel comfortable dealing with kids in such a complex situation on that basis. Wonderful people I'm dealing with here.
Yeah, the tip top. The government tends to choose the best people for the job,
yeah, absolutely.
I found.
They're and this judge has been very clear. She loves these two counselors. She knows them and really likes them. She's been absolutely open about that.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue with how custody courts operate, is they get someone, they work well with them, and then that person, they will get the next appointment as well, because why wouldn't they? They know them, they're going to get along, they're familiar with the procedure, and it's really easy. But then when they're acting badly, there's not much recourse.
That's right. And these, look, you talked about Judge Wheelis in the Long case, right?
Right. Yeah.
This is a judge who was engaged with ex parte communication with counselors on Facebook, showing Long's child's medical records and psychological records. I mean, these judges are talking to these counselors and telling them what answers they want in court.
Yeah, it's wild. That was Ray Wheelis. And there is some overlap there, right? Because Ray Wheelis is the person who appointed the judge in your case.
Yeah. So what happened when I got that good ruling from the 2019 trial? Coons Fuller, who is the most powerful family law firm in the state of Texas, and I believe the largest donor to judicial campaigns in the state, managed to get my judge recused. And here's what they got her recused for. She went onto Facebook after the trial was over and said, everyone got a fair hearing in my court.
Which is a neutral statement.
It's a neutral statement.
Perfectly
and they got her recused for it. Yeah. And it was all corrupt. It was very clear. It was fixed from the very beginning. But nevertheless, I spent the money to defend the judge and fight the recusal. I did that because the judge, I thought, had given me a fair ruling, and it was fair for me to do that. But it was very clear that it was completely fixed from the get-go. And then it went to the administrative judge for this region, and that went to Ray Wheelis. And Ray Wheelis assigned me to Mary Brown, the most left-wing pro-trans judge in Dallas County.
And that's who issued the recent order. So we're echoing again. Just a second. I wonder if it's so weird that it started to pick it up. Okay. So
am I echoing?
Yeah, you are. Well, my voice is echoing through you, but it's kind of on and off. So we'll just go. Ray, I
don't have anything of that over here. I hear it perfectly here. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you wouldn't hear it. It just comes through. It comes back through my headphones, but that's okay. It sounds like it's going to just happen from time to time. That'll be fine. Okay. So Ray Wheelis appoints this person, but so what happened is back in 2019, you got a favorable ruling.
Yes.
And all you had were the counseling sessions to basically complete. Once you completed those, you're at 50-50 custody, no child support.
Right.
And I assume that's because you and Miss, how do I say her last name?
Georgilis.
Miss Georgilis, both make pretty decent incomes. So there's not really a super need for child support, especially in a 50-50 situation. Yeah. And so, so then once they get the judge recused, they then make a motion to modify the parenting agreement and go back to trial. Was the basis for the motion the recusal of the judge, or was the basis some change in circumstance other than that?
It was my refusal to consent to counseling that affirmed my son as a girl.
Right. It's like just appoint a new counselor then.
I know. But do you see how they the counselor intentionally created conditions that I could not consent to?
Right.
That was all done on purpose. Yeah.
Now, this is one of the interesting things that I noticed from news stories that have been covering your recent decision is that your attorney's statements on this are pretty clear. And your attorney seems like a pretty good guy who has his head on his shoulders. I mean, I don't know him or anything, but he said the opposing party tried to make it out like this had nothing to do with the gender issue.
Yes.
And your attorney's like, of course it has. It has everything to do with the gender issue. That's the core issue going on here. It's the source of the custody fight.
100%.
It's the and they of course are filing this motion to change custody based on your issue with the counselor's gender affirming policy.
That's right.
I hate that term, by the way. I hate gender affirming because it's not actually gender affirming.
No, it's delusion affirming. I just call it gender bending therapy. I just refuse to call it that in court as well. The other thing is that the American Psychological Association and the Texas Psychological Association have put out guidelines which basically prevent psychologists from helping children identify with their biological sex. They consider that reparative therapy. So the only thing that these counselors can do under the guidelines is push a child towards transgender transition, towards chemical castration and sex change surgeries. That's all they can do.
Right, which is absolutely insane because
it's absolutely mad.
There is there is a recognized thing called gender dysphoria, right? Yes. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not trying to comment on the validity of it, but the occurrences of gender dysphoria are extremely, extremely rare.
Yes.
And there's a particular set of criteria that they have to meet. And it's an exacting set of criteria. It's hard to get a gender dysphoria diagnosis, or at least it used to be. I think it's easier now because they're changing the way things work in the DSM, and they're expanding this thing. Well, like you said, you have to affirm gender. You have to affirm supposed gender identity. And so it's like, well, and I think this is especially prevalent in your case here, is that your son's been being told by his mother that he's a girl since he's 2.5 years old. I mean, if a parent, kids are concrete thinkers, right? So if you teach them that something is, then it just is. And so you've got 5-6 years of programming before this thing even really kicks off.
You're right.
Going on. And it's so wild to think that in any other instance, like if we go to the Long case, for example, he's accused of alienation, of parental alienation, that he was bad-mouthing the spouse, and the time frame in which he had to accomplish this complete instilling of distrust in his daughter of the mother would have had to, it was so short that it's unbelievable.
Right.
But in your case, you have 7 years, and they're not even, did they even question like parental alienation or parental coaching or anything like that?
Never once was that even considered by the court. The court's never made any findings on it. And let's also remember that my son does not present as a girl with anyone but his mom.
Right. So
he's a normal boy. He's a very skilled boxer. He plays football. They were just the champion. They were the number 2 team in their last league in football. I mean, this is a normal boy. And yet they still choose this abnormal gender expression with their mother. It's bizarre.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that kids do, because I mean, my kids act differently with me than they do with my wife.
I would hope so.
On little things,
Yeah.
right. And so you kind of wonder. I mean, there's a level of conditioning, and it could just be that he, this is his thing with mom, right? Like this is how he hangs out with mom. And that's how he's always hung out with mom. And that's kind of like just the conditioned behavior. Is that a thing, or do you think it's more than that?
I think James is a victim of operant conditioning. There's no question in my mind about it. I think Miss Georgilis is probably a high functioning sociopath, looks upon him more like a machine than as a human being, and tries to program him.
So then so operant conditioning tends to involve like a harsh punishment for a wrong choice.
Yeah, it could also be a good too. So
okay,
and I think she's manipulated him with the threat of denial of affection and abandonment, and he displays that fear of that when he's with me. I mean, he literally sits on my lap all day long when he's here with me. So
now with so since you have 2 boys, and your other one, of course, is not the subject of the major news story, but how are things with Jude? Like, what are there any issues or contentions with him? He's kind of off to the side in the public side of the story. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, Jude is. It's hard to explain this. So here's a little experience that I had with my kids when they were just before two. They were like 1 3/4. I do not understand the modern cartoons. I'm sorry to all the manga fans out there and all the anime fans. I have really, I did like Cowboy Bebop. I understood that, but I cannot understand many of the others.
No, you just passed the test. You picked out a good one, and the rest is all degenerate garbage. It's
Gotcha. Good. So I got my kids some of the old cartoons that I used to watch. So I got them like the Johnny Quest DVDs, and they have like real guns in them. And when you shoot people, they don't get back up and all that kind of stuff. And the kids do really interesting stuff and solve real mysteries and things. Well, there's this one part in, I think it's the episode is called The Invisible Monster. And this monster is chasing their dog Bandit. And James is saying things like, Johnny's going to get him. Bandit's fast enough to get away. That monster is not, and saying things like that. And Jude is saying things like, Bandit's scared. Look at how worried Johnny is. James was living the outer life of the characters, and Jude was living the inner life of the characters. And they were just born that way. And that's Jude's temperament. So Jude is a very sincere child. He has he doesn't have any guile or second intentions, and hasn't developed that way of thinking yet. One time we had been out rabbit hunting. I grew up hunting rabbits with a Apache throwing stick, so I've been teaching my boys how to do that. We were out the creek. We came back. We were all dirty, and we were all three getting in the shower, piling in there to get cleaned up for supper. And Jude just points down at James's crotch and says, how come they keep saying he's a girl? And I said, at that time, I was actually under temporary orders, which prohibited me from teaching my sons that they were boys or girls. And yes, I was actually under temporary orders where I was prohibited from teaching my sons whether they were boys or girls. So that's the run up to the 2019 trial. So I said, well, look, I can't talk about that because of the court order. I'm not allowed to tell you these things, but I read Genesis to you every night up to the creation of man and woman. What do you think? And he said, well, he's clearly a boy, and
right.
So what he's struggling with is he knows he's not supposed to break the commandments. He's not supposed to lie, but he knows he's lying at his mom's house. And so his moral thing is, when is it okay to break God's commandments? And that's a horrible place for a boy his age to be. Right.
Right. It's like, when a government tyrant orders you, you have to.
Yeah.
That's, I guess that's the answer. Cause that is a tough question though. Kids are concrete thinkers, and when you're especially, that's why it's such a useful thing to teach them a biblical approach to morality early on, is because, lots of Bible stories operate on a very black and white principle, and kids like those stories because they understand them. Right? God told Adam not to touch or not to eat the fruit. He ate the fruit. He gets punished and he goes.
That's
simple resolution there. And so,
and just let me tell you, let me just tell you about my parenting style. This is what's so funny about this. This is one thing that Benjamin Albritton, even as bad as his report was, even he had to admit this. He really didn't want to, because one of the standard things they charge fathers with is being authoritarian and bullying with kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they asked my kids, well, tell us about the rules that you have at your dad's house. My sons told them, oh, we don't have any rules at dad's house. And then they said, what? Then they're thinking over permissive parent, right? Now we can get in with the over permissive thing. And so they asked them, this is all in the record, right? This is all in the report and in the record. And then they said, well, then, how does your dad, teach you, what to wear and all these other things? And they said, well, my dad operates on the be reasonable principle. We're supposed to be reasonable with everybody. We don't have to be perfect. And if we make a mistake, if we fix it, it's not a mistake. Right. And it just destroyed them. So that's why it's so laughable when I hear Dr. Susan Fletcher saying things like, oh, your sons are terrified of you, that they'll be disciplined if they don't do this. We don't do discipline here like that. That doesn't exist at my house. Your room doesn't have to be perfectly straightened up. It should just never rise to the level of my attention. If it does, then I'll have to remind you. And that means you have to clean it up at an inconvenient time. That's about as bad as it gets here.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that a parent might make a kid clean their room?
Yes.
You monster.
And I don't let them wear
fully
crazy
opposed
stuff.
to you.
Yeah, I don't let them wear, if we're going to go visit their grandmother, these boys are properly dressed.
Right.
Okay. If we're going to go out and do some work, I don't let them wear shorts and things. We wear long pants to protect ourselves. They understand that there's certain ways to dress at different times. And I was taught that as a boy, and I've taught that to my boys. We're boxers. We're a boxing family, but we don't always dress like boxers, right? That's not appropriate. When we're going to go out to dinner and we're going to go to a restaurant, we're going to wear slacks. We're going to wear a shirt.
Yeah. I mean, I remember going to my grandparents' house, and I mean, I went to my grandparents' house all the time. You know, it's like, don't wear that shirt. Maybe wear a button-up shirt or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Wear a polo. Wear whatever. You just, there's a level of respect that that my parents had for their parents,
Sure.
and because guess what? When they visited their grandparents, they had to. It was probably on Sunday. Pretty often, they'd see them at church or go over for a family meal, and they're going to dress a little bit nice. That's okay, because shockingly, as much as some people don't want it, we have plenty of instances, court being a big one, where you dress appropriately for the occasion. Again, there's nothing wrong with any of this. I'm still waiting. I'm waiting to hear the gotcha where you are an absolute monster.
There's no gotcha here. I mean, if there was a gotcha, if there was like some seriously like messed up abuse of James or something, it would have been in the order.
It would have been in the papers.
It's not there.
I mean, can you imagine in this environment?
All she says in the judgment, literally all she says is, because Mr. Younger refuses to follow the order in the best interest of the children, boom, he loses all his rights. That's it.
Yeah, because if like the headline writes itself, right? If there was any sort of abuse going on of James, you would have the headline immediately on BuzzFeed.
Media would be all over this. You know, it'd be smeared everywhere. Christian
dad abuses transgender child, refusing to. I mean, that would be the lead story. They'd run it for weeks. Right. Salon.com would have your address published in an hour.
What this is really about is that I embarrassed the court. I embarrassed the judge. And I did that because I told the judge point blank that the gag order they put me under was unconstitutional. It actually barred me from speaking about certain political topics. I could not speak about LGBT issues. I could not speak about trans issues. I could not talk about whether my sons were boys or girls, all kinds of stuff like this. And this was needed. I needed to talk to people about this because I'm trying to pass a law here in Texas. And we live in a democracy. Well, you know, we could debate that at some point.
Right.
But we need to cooperate with our fellow citizens to change government policy, right? And my story is an example of something that needs to be fixed. And I need to be able to tell that story to get a law passed, okay? And I almost did get a law passed. It took incredible effort by the Speaker of the Texas House to stop it, and it's probably going to cost him his job. So we almost succeeded. Okay, but my story was important to tell as an example of what's happening, because honestly, people didn't believe this was happening. I still get people saying, this isn't really happening. You're making this up. I still get that today. So what the judge wanted to do was to shut down my ability to politically cooperate with my fellow citizens because she's a trans advocate and did not want a law passed.
Is there any open trans advocacy by the judge, like that people could find?
You can go out to our website and you'll see all kinds of LGBT stuff on our website, on our campaign website. The other thing is, I was open with the judge. I went on speaking engagements. I went on YouTube, and I said and I told the judge in the courtroom, okay, that I want her to put me in jail for violating that gag order. I said, right. If you think that gag order is constitutional, if you believe that you have the right to take away my political speech because I have just for the temerity of having children, if you believe that, then you are obligated to give me the maximum contempt sentence that you can give because I have blatantly violated it. And I am very eager to go to jail and challenge this in the Texas Supreme Court. And she won't do that because she'd lose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the first of all, gag orders in general, I'm opposed to them at a general level.
I think almost none of them are constitutional. Yeah.
Right. And but I'll recognize that courts have upheld some gag orders. But I think one of the issues, and this is the issue you're highlighting, is you're not actually being punished by this gag order. So it's hard to actually have standing to bring the challenge against it.
Correct.
I mean, you can argue that it's a prior restraint,
Yes.
but when you go and say, but I violated the order, they said, well, I guess it wasn't a restraint then.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what would happen. And when I talked to appellate attorneys, that's exactly what they told me. So the judge was very clear. The judge said this in court. Mr. Younger, if you don't follow the gag order, I'm allowed to make adverse inferences and I can take your possession time with your children. That's exactly what she did.
So that's on the record in the court?
Yep, that's on the record.
That's infuriating. Like, because that should never be. Remember, the family court's mantra is best interest of the child, and violating a court gag order has nothing to do with being in the best interest of a child.
Nothing to do with it at all. The other thing is, who is the party that is doing something wrong? Is it the party that wants everything out in the open, like me? Or is it the parties that want to keep everything secret and seal everything and make sure nobody knows what's going on? What's really troubling to them is that all of their actions are in public now. When we had the last Zoom hearing, we had over 900 people on that hearing.
Oh, that
scares them. That scares them.
Yeah.
And it's going to be worse when we have physical trials again. They're going to fill up that courtroom. It's going to be totally full. And they really resent that and blame all that on me. And that's really just their own egos. They're really punishing me because I'm making them uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I was down at a district court hearing in Tarrant County, and this is well before COVID or anything like that. And the judge commented, he's like, wow, there were like 30 or 40 people in the courtroom. It was full, but this is a Tarrant County courtroom. It's not a big place.
Right.
And he's like, don't usually have an audience. Judges get really nervous when people watch. Like and they get performative and weird.
Yes, you're right. In Texas, a lot of the things that I've seen in court, I've rarely seen a family court trial. Now, I have seen many hearings where this did not happen, but I'm thinking about at a trial where the judge didn't commit an actual felony on the bench. I mean, it's very common. I mean, I've seen judges make objections and sustain their own objections.
Yeah, I've seen that too, actually.
I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. I watched a judge help the opposing counsel as a pro se litigant father, help the mother's lawyer craft a better record for appeal.
Oh my God.
Right there on the record, man.
Yeah.
They're just not used to people listening to them and watching them, and it makes them nervous. Court watching is one of the most valuable things people can do to hold judges accountable.
Well, it's a fundamental principle of the founding of our nation and the establishment of the open court. And we've so many people fighting against it today, and some of them have good intentions, right? They're like, oh, we don't want transparency because, well, if someone gets accused of a crime, that record can follow them around in the same way that an actual conviction would. And it's like, yeah, but the trade-off is that injustice occurs in the dark.
That's right. And it never gets found. And family court is far more opaque than criminal court, right? I mean, family court it's that basically these things are all conducted in secret.
Yeah, because they justify it by saying, well, the children have a privacy interest, and so everything has to be, it's not necessarily sealed, but it's not easily publicly accessible.
Right.
And then the moment there's publicity about a case,
boom,
sealed. Oh, we can't let this follow the kids around. It's like, you don't care. The kids, you don't care about the kids.
This is one thing we actually have a new motion, a non-party motion in my case. It was made by Dr. Susan Fletcher, and she has determined that she doesn't have to give me my son's psychological records. And it appears under Texas law, parents don't have a right to their children's psychological records. That's my take on it right now. I think she may be right that she doesn't have to give those to me. So she's asking the court to make a decision. She wants me to go to trial without her psychological record, without the psychological records for my own son, which is what I need to make my case.
Right. And I assume she's going to testify, or well, she would be a witness.
Absolutely. And she wants me to not be able to depose her on these things either.
Of course not. Why would she want to be under oath?
Yeah, I can't do discovery with her, and yet opposing counsel can and will use that against me at trial.
Well, because she can voluntarily disclose whatever she wants to opposing counsel. She can provide them a favorable affidavit. But if she doesn't want to provide that for you, your option is to subpoena her. And under her call right now, I mean, I hear you. I can't believe that's true, but at the same time, I kind of believe it's true. It's so offensive to the notion of fair dealing and justice.
I can't believe that would ever pass muster in appellate court. That's essentially denying me adversarial evidence. It's preventing me from presenting an adversarial case, which is the whole basis of our justice system here. Right.
But the family law system doesn't really care about that.
Oh, yeah. In fact, my previous lawyer was asked by a corporate lawyer in a hallway there in Dallas County. He said, "Oh, hey, look." He said, "Hey, Logan, how you doing, man?" Yeah. He said, "You're doing family law?" Yeah. And it says, "I'm doing corporate law. I hate it. I'm in an office all day, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Well, what's it like doing family law?" And Logan said, "Well, it's just like doing corporate law like you do, except the judges don't follow the Constitution. Otherwise, it's exactly the same." That's basically it. There is no, it's the Wild West, man. There's no rules. I've seen them violate black letter procedure at a whim, just at a whim.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a lawyer in Texas. We were talking about incidentally, we weren't even talking about your case yet. I brought it up after this conversation, but they were talking about some family law cases that their firm had been taking on, and how where they are, the justices are actually changing, and they had like a good old boys club who just kind of made things up as they go. But now they've got some younger judges in there who are following procedure. And now all these old family law firms are getting absolutely raked over the coals because some younger attorneys come in there and they just follow the law, and they're winning. And I said to him, that there's no price tag you could put on a judge that just follows the law. That is
absolutely right.
Because that's typically at least you believe that you're arguing from a position that you have the law on your side. That's why you're in court and not settling. Right. And so then when you have a judge that just doesn't follow it, though, that you lose. There's no winning.
Let me tell you a story about a judge who follows the law and what happens here in Texas. So in Tarrant County, where you went to visit, there's a judge named Alex Kim. He's a very popular judge because he's a very fair judge. Okay. This is a judge that just calls balls and strikes. That's all he does. Right. And so when CPS would come into his court to take people's children and put their children into foster care, he decided that they weren't going to have these little sham hearings where they read scripts and all this stuff to just take kids. He said, "No, actually, we're going to have a trial, and you're going to have to prove your case, and it's going to have to be by a preponderance of the evidence." And CPS, the agency, went to all the other judges in Tarrant County and got them to take a vote to remove all CPS cases from his court.
Jeez,
that's how bad it is here. We have an issue with family courts here, and I'm going to say this. I've told the Attorney General this in Texas. I've been open about saying this. I'm not advocating what I'm about to say, but I'm warning people about it. We are reaching a point where the family courts have become so abusive that in some of the rural counties that I've spoken in, there's open talk of judicial assassinations. There's open talk of outright insurrection. There's been cases where I've had sheriffs tell people, "Calm down. This isn't the right time for that." I mean, you're talking about stealing people's kids on an industrial scale. And if you keep doing that, you're going to have massive social unrest. That's why I love the background that you've got here. It's very appropriate because that's exactly where we're headed.
It's amazing that this background has been appropriate for basically every interview stream I've done that it's been up. It just keeps everything's on fire.
My father used to say when I was in my 20s, I couldn't believe how stupid my dad was, and by the time I was 40, I couldn't believe how smart he'd gotten.
Yeah.
So
Kidding.
he used to tell me, your first recourse always in dealing with a problem is the letterbox. Send somebody a letter, explain the problem, and try to work it out. If that doesn't work, you've got the ballot box. You can try to pass a law that changes things to so that you think that they're right. If that doesn't work, you can always go to the jury box, right? You can have your citizens adjudicate a case, and if you're right, you'll win. If that doesn't work, all that's left is the cartridge box. And the courts are the last peaceful mechanism to resolve disputes in our society. And when they become corrupt like this, you're headed for some big trouble.
Yeah, and CPS in Texas, people don't really know this. I talked about it a little bit on my show yesterday, but CPS in Texas is actually under the jurisdiction of a federal circuit judge.
That's correct.
Because they've been so bad and so abusive and so dangerous to the children that they're supposed to protect.
They lost hundreds of kids in the foster care system. They lost them. We have more trafficked children in Texas than any other state in the union. This state has a very serious problem with government corruption that's involved with child trafficking.
Yeah, and that's something that's really terrifying with how these family courts and CPS are operating, because they operate on a different set of rules. And it's really unfortunate, because I keep talking about these Texas cases, and in so many things, Texas is a great state.
Yes, but this is not one of them.
Right. In family law right now, Texas has real problems, and I wouldn't say they're unique to Texas, but they're unique to a limited number of states. It's not the typical experience.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't matter whether the judge is Democrat or Republican either. Like some of the absolute worst rulings, LeClay case, which is right near me, right up the road from me. The case where a Republican female judge decided that the boyfriend of the wife should get possession time.
For what?
So here's the deal. Here's the fact pattern. She divorced. Yeah. She had an affair with this man and divorced the husband. Then she was in a car accident about 6 months after the divorce was finalized.
Sure. Okay?
The judge gave primary custody back to the father, but then said the boyfriend would get custody just like as if he was a non-custodial parent.
So wait, did the mom die?
The mom died. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
So he's got to share custody with the man that broke up his marriage.
That's insanity.
And he knew the kid less than 6 months. That was a Republican judge. And the appeals court upheld it. And it took the Supreme Court to slap it down.
I'm frankly, I'm shocked the Texas Supreme Court heard the case.
Yes.
That's what I'm shocked by. When the Texas Supreme Court steps in and hears cases, they're usually fairly good on the issues.
Yes.
But they just ignore a ton of them because of various reasons.
Yeah.
But appealing family court decisions is such a as you know, it's a mess.
It's a total mess.
You can't appeal a temporary order.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look even just like at the pattern jury charges here in Texas in family court, there's nothing there. Like there's no elements to prove. Like it's just completely subjective. That's just wide open, right? But here's the thing: Texas is not a state that has 3 co-equal branches of government. Okay.
No.
In Texas, the legislature is supreme. It is the king of all the other branches. Okay. There's 2 mechanisms under the Texas Constitution to supervise and discipline judges, right? Well, really 3. One of them is the appellate process, right? The usual process for correcting mistakes.
Yep.
The other one is the Supreme Court has direct supervisory responsibility over all Texas courts.
Right.
And they have a discipline committee that they run. Do you know that in that committee, they have to station DPS officers because the judges frequently become violent?
Well, they have, yeah,
They have to have state troopers in there in the state capitol because they've had people injured in fights in there. Okay.
well,
So
that is kind of a charming aspect of Texas judges, right? You get the
yes,
occasional YouTube video where the Texas judge is like yelling at the defendant. He's like, "I'll kick your ass,"
yes, yes,
and then he
absolutely.
does.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, no, it's because they're elected judges.
They're elected judges.
And they're elected by rowdy Texans in a lot of cases, especially in rural communities.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna get a judge who goes by Chip or whatever.
That's
His name
correct.
is actually something
That's
completely
correct.
different. But he's been in the community for 40 years. You know, he used to run the auto mechanic shop, and they got his law degree. And
Yeah.
like, it's weird, but that's kind of the culture. But what now? Correct me if I'm wrong. Are the primary areas where the real problems in family court occurring, though, are they in sort of the more urban areas? The
No question about it. Although we still have a lot of white knighting type judges out in the rural areas.
Right.
But what's interesting is the judges out there fashion much more fair outcomes so that you rarely have these really bad issues. It's in these urban enclaves where you have, I wouldn't say leftist, it's more liberal judges. Judges that cling to the Duluth model on domestic violence and all sorts. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to tell you. So I was falsely charged with domestic violence and had a $40,000 criminal trial over that.
Jeez.
Because in Texas, if you're convicted of any form of domestic violence, you can never have primary possession of a child ever again for the rest of your life. So she falsely accused me of domestic violence. We went to trial. There was a witness that she didn't know about, and the prosecutor failed to do adequate discovery, so he wasn't prepared for the witness. And she lied. She completely lied. The judge had to send the bailiff in to tell the jury to be quiet because they were laughing in the jury room because it was such a ridiculous case. And within 15 minutes, I was pronounced not guilty, but it cost me $40,000.
Yeah. And that's the punishment of all of this, right? Like
Yes.
you could have, in theory, you could have tried to fight the gag order. It's an a priori restraint. You could have tried to bring that to you could have filed in district court to go after it, then taken that up to the appeals court. But you're talking $250,000, $300,000 in
Correct.
legal fees to do so.
Correct.
And the judge knows that most people, like, you're like, okay, do I spend $200,000 fighting this in another court, maybe losing, or do I spend $200,000 fighting for my kids in family court?
Right. That's exactly right.
It's disgusting.
And that's what the judge is currently trying to do to me. So one of the tricks they'll do is like, they'll give you. They gave me like $10,000. I had to pay $5,000 to the amicus attorney, $5,000 to opposing counsel over some absurd motion to compel thing that just was a way for the judge to find me. And so they do this. And then that leaves me not enough money to pay child support is what they're hoping, or something like that. So they'll take money from one area and make sure you can't pay it in another area. That's also what the judge is trying to do to me now.
Yeah. So because the interesting thing, Texas is there aren't a lot of states that do this, but Texas has a quote unquote, this just goes to the inherent, time of when this was passed, but a deadbeat dad statute, right?
Yes.
Where if you don't pay child support in Texas, you go to jail.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't pay,
it's a state jail felony. I mean, you lose your right to possess a firearm, all the stuff that goes along with a felony conviction. They take your driver's license, take your passport. You can't have any state licensure of any kind. You can't work in almost any service industry that deals with. I mean, they nail you.
Yeah, I know. I have relatives who've been hit by it. Now, to be fair, they were just kind of being deadbeats, but that's but it, and in principle, you think about it, you're like, well, yeah, if someone's not going to pay the child support, they're not going to do, because, and this is how the courts operate in this way. And I'm sure you run into this all the time. Is people go, well, yeah, of course we want to enforce someone who's not going to take up responsibility and pay for their kids. You know, they went to court, they got the ruling, they had their opportunity. And so now, you know, they'll go ahead, they made their choices, and now they got to pay for it. And then people don't consider the realities and the implications of this thing, of these simple sort of things.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's,
you know, if you look at how child support is calculated in Texas, it doesn't take into account the income of the mother. So in Texas, it's just a straight, you take your gross income. Yeah. And it starts at 20% of your gross income, and it goes up by 5% for every child thereafter. Right?
That's crazy.
So what I know. So, and remember, a lot of people don't know this, like your audience may not know this, but child support is not deductible. The mother gets to deduct the child support that you pay her.
Right. Yeah. That's not counted as income for her.
That's correct. So what the deal is that, like, look, even millionaires can't absorb 30% non-deductible expenses. Like, that's not absorbable. Nobody can absorb this. Okay. So if you look at people at the median wage in Texas, which is in the 30K a year, 35K roughly. If you do all the math on the taxes they pay, we don't have an income tax, right? But we have other taxes. Right. You do all the math on all the taxes that they pay, including things like toll roads and things like that to get to work, and you average all this out, you find that the average guy that makes 35K a year with 2 kids has $9,000 left to live on. And you cannot live in Dallas County or any of the surrounding counties on $9,000 a year. You can't even pay your rent on that, much less feed yourself. So what happens is, and I don't think this is why I think most of the homeless population is male. They'll put you on the seesaw, right? I've been down there to those Title 4D courts. You go down there, they'll put you in jail in this county clink for 6 months, right? And the county gets $95 a day for you in there, and they make $15 a day off of you from that.
Here, one second.
Go ahead.
1 second. A Title 4D court, guys, is Title 4D is how someone goes to the government to assist them in getting child support. So they're like maybe they don't have the funds to hire an attorney or whatever, so they contact the county, and through the Department of County Services, they will get a court-appointed attorney to pursue child support against typically the father. And this is I think this is in every state, because in Minnesota it's Title 4D also.
It's a federal law. It was put in place by Jimmy Carter in the 1970s.
Oh, thank God God bless Jimmy Carter.
Yes. And it sets up one of the worst. It's actually the origin of most of the problems in family court. Title 4D provides matching funds for the collection of child support to the states. Okay. It's 60 cents on the dollar. So every dollar you pay through the state disbursement unit in child support, the state gets 60 cents in matching funds. So let me just tell you what that is in Texas. In Texas, that funds the entire Attorney General's office for the state of Texas. It's $750 million. Okay. This is a lot of money. It's so much money that the Attorney General goes to county courts, like the family district courts in Dallas, and gives them a child support quota that they must assign to get the federal matching funds. Okay. And Title 4E is the CPS version of that, where they get like $100,000 when they adopt out a baby.
Yeah. Which is
so they're financially, in Texas, the Judicial Retirement Fund is funded from Title 4D. The more child support a judge enters, the higher their retirement.
Yeah, that seems like a conflict of interest.
Absolutely.
Now, in Minnesota, we have it's interesting hearing you, because I don't do family law in Texas. So in Minnesota, we have a completely different child support system than that.
Okay.
What we have in Minnesota is a calculator. Anybody can go do this calculator. It's kind of neat. You put in your income, your spouse's income, or ex-spouse or whatever, and then you lay out the expenses. You lay out the amount paid by each of them to their employers for health insurance and all of that stuff. And then it actually spits out a number, and that is the presumptive award. So it's literally math based on both incomes, the percentage of time that they have with the kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and our judges, to deviate from that order, they have to justify the deviation with a set of statutory reasons for the deviation. It's not a great system, but it's a better system.
It's better than Texas, because low-income men simply can't pay child support here. It's too much.
How could you? If like you said, $35,000 a year with 2 kids, you're left with $9,000 left over. If you're taking 30% of your income, that's what, $11,500 roughly.
Yes.
And it's like, how could so that's not enough. Plus, that doesn't even count eating.
No, it doesn't. And so what happens is these guys will go in for 6 months into county jail on contempt charges. First of all, they're going to jail for debts, which is illegal in this country anyway.
Right.
But then they get out for 6 months, right? And then they're supposed to get straight and catch up in 6 months, which they can't do. Then they go back in for 6 months, out for 6 months. After a few times, you know what they do? They burn their identification cards and they become homeless.
Yeah, or commit a worse crime.
That's what they do.
And go to prison.
Yeah. I mean,
because it's easier.
Yeah. You just have to disappear and never see your kids again. That's what you do. Your kids become like this reason you're being imprisoned.
Yeah, it's insane. And the weird thing is, in all other areas, Texas is like the best place to be in.
That is correct. Yes.
Just not on child support.
Not on child support. It's one of the worst. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why that is. Having been in the Texas legislature, actively involved for the last 4 years, I've been through 2 legislative sessions. The Texas Republican caucus, we control all 3 branches of government. They still appoint Democrats to key committees as a gesture of bipartisanship.
Right.
They typically will give a Democrat control of the juvenile committee. And the largest transfer of wealth in the United States is from men to women in the form of child support. And the Democrats look upon that as a form of welfare for women. And they've done everything in this state to increase it. And they just did increase it in the last session. Your retirement earnings were exempted if they weren't earned during the marriage. They were exempted from child support collections. But they just removed that now. And so if you had retirement for 20 years and then you get married and you adopt a kid, and then she divorces you, they can go after your retirement from even before you were married.
That's insane. That violates the core principles of the marital estate, which is you bring to the marital estate what's yours, yes, and you leave the marital estate with what you brought to it.
Yes.
Unless you go through a very complicated commingling sort of understanding where I'm giving ownership, like you are taking an affirmative step to give ownership into those assets to the other spouse.
Right. That's right. And I think we've reached a point in the legal regime that regulates marriage that, I'm a Christian, but I'm sorry. I tell every young man that I meet, don't get married under any circumstances. It's aren't any good reasons to do it anymore. And if you
get married by your church,
I know. And if you want to get married, if you want to have children, adopt or use a surrogate, because that's the only legal way to be secure in your posterity. Nobody can take your kids away from you if you do that. Now, I'm morally opposed to surrogacy, right? I'm not morally opposed to adopting orphans. I think that's laudable. But what I'm saying is the laws are so bad that the only way that you can protect your posterity is to do these kinds of things. How bad are the laws that that's the case? I'm sorry, I just spilled something. My bad.
Oh, no, that's okay. You just spilled a bunch of red pills is what you did.
Yeah, don't get married. If you're a young man listening, do not get married.
It's starting to look that way. I mean, which is crazy to me because, you said you're a Christian. I've been a Christian my entire life. I was raised Catholic. Now I'm some breed of somewhere between Catholic and heathen. I don't even know anymore.
I'm Orthodox. So we're Catholic without the Pope.
Right. But with lots of gold, right?
Lots of gold. Lots of icons and long liturgies.
That's true. I went to an Orthodox wedding and I was like, oh dear Lord.
Yes, and that's nothing compared to the liturgy. Look, our liturgy goes from 8 a.m. till noon.
Not in this house. I'm not up at 8.
A Roman Catholic liturgy is like 20 minutes. You're out, man.
It's even shorter if you got a football game on.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, I've got some chats coming in here that I've been ignoring, so we need to get to those. Gangtarov says, we have been and will continue to pray for James. Even if you lose, the best thing is to have a dad who fights for you. Look up the story of Saints Theodore and John of Kiev. Quote, my son will not be a sacrifice to demons.
Thank you.
So there you go. Philip Kozlowski says, family court is like that across the country. It's absolutely bad. And the federal laws in place for interstate custody orders is almost non-existent. Yeah, it's really weird because it's really hard. If someone takes your kid out of state, it's really hard to get your kid back, even if you have every right to the kid. But yet federal government with Title 4D, for example, and Title 4E, Title 4 in general, have stepped into the family court system, but they did it by bribery.
Correct.
We'll give the states tons of money.
Correct. And I mean, it's astounding how much money the states get from the collection of child support. They have a vested interest in helping your wife divorce you and assigning the maximum child support they can. They actually make money. The judge personally makes money if they can assign more child support to you. That's how bad it is. Would you enter into a business contract in which one side could unilaterally violate the contract and take all the assets, whether there was any misconduct under the contract or not? Of course, you would never sign such a contract. Unfortunately, that is the contract you have to sign when you get married, because that's how these cases are adjudicated.
And the other part that they have is they try and so I mentioned earlier, well, just get married through your church, but not through the state. But if you want to, like you said, you've got to adopt or have surrogate children, because if you have a child out of wedlock, then the mother's right to the children is presumed. The
Correct.
Dad has to fight for it.
Correct.
So even if you're not getting married by the state and you're trying to avoid the divorce issues there, but you have children, you're gonna potentially run into custody issues.
Yes. I should probably change that and add something like, don't get married and don't impregnate women.
Yeah. It's because
do it.
It's like I think people get hung up on the idea that marriage is the issue, but it's not just that. It's anything. The state has engineered a system to
Hello? I lost you.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. So I was saying the state has created a system that takes advantage of the male proclivity to procreate.
Yes.
And then attempts to weaponize that to go ahead and punish.
Yes. You can absolutely tell in family court, as soon as they see a father is going to try for joint custody, they immediately that's when they assign all the counselors, all the amicus attorneys. They know this guy will spend all his money to see his kids, and they'll just pass it out to their cronies. It's an incredibly corrupt system, and it can't last much longer. It's just gotten to the point where it's so bad, and it has ruined so many men's lives. Dude, it's gonna make BLM, look like a Boy Scout rally.
Yeah, that's the thing, because in Texas, if you had someone who wasn't a judge in Texas running around taking children, especially in rural Texas, that person would end up buried under a dusty road somewhere. Like, it'd be once the town found out about it, one kid suspicious or whatever disappears. 2-3 kids start going away. My buddy, a lawyer in Texas, says the he needed killing defense.
Yes. Yes.
And there are stories about this where towns are suddenly silent. Some child molester or whatever gets killed, and none of the town saw or knew anything. They didn't. All of them were listening to Enya or whatever at the time.
Sure.
So, but when they're doing it through the courts, they think that eventually people won't rise up. But I mean, it is still, at the end of the day, they need to be worried because it is still Texas, and there's a lot of guns and there's a lot of just generally kind of traditional values still left in the state. I know people want to pretend that it's going entirely blue or whatever, but there's a ton of red-blooded Texans out there.
Yeah, I mean, our leaders actually still fear us here. Jefferson said, Madison said, when the government fears the people, you have freedom. When the people fear the government, you have tyranny. The government still fears us. I mean, I really believe that one of the reasons we got through committee on our bills to outlaw sex change surgeries on kids, even though the entire establishment here wanted to block it. They were really afraid of just taking a deer rifle round somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, they were just really afraid. I mean, really. They're afraid of doing the wrong thing sometimes. And I think that's good. And but the family courts have just gotten so incredibly abusive, so bad, that I just don't see how you can do this to fathers without something really bad happening. And I hear it from fathers all the time. I can't believe that it doesn't happen. I mean, it's just amazing to me. But some of the stories, like in my case, I'm literally having to watch my son be abused right in front of my eyes every single day, literally every day. And I consider this to be sexual abuse of a child. And, I'm the one that has to be calm. If you're a male, any display of emotion, is going to be held against you, right? But a woman could come up and stab you. Well, for example, the false charges of domestic violence that I endured, the courts have just ignored that. They don't care about that. Had I been convicted, they would very much care, but they don't care that she made a false charge.
No, that's the amazing part of false allegations. And it's taking it out of this context, right? The false rape allegations, like in the Duke lacrosse scandal and stuff like that. Nothing ever happened to the false accusers, but the people who were accused, their lives are still ruined, even though they were exonerated of any wrongdoing, because the accusation alone was enough for enough people to go, well, but they probably got off on some technicality or whatever.
Right.
They probably actually did it though.
Yeah, that's right.
And
we have an entire, every county office has a Texas Attorney General liaison where they teach them to file these reports. And I've heard them in the Dallas County office say, look, you're going to get a big advantage in getting your kids from this.
Yeah.
I mean, they sell it to women to do these false allegations all the time.
Yeah, it's lovely that our government aligns against us because of our chromosomes.
Well, what are we going to do about it? Like, what are we going to do to deal with these judges? What do you think?
I mean, the easy but not really easy answer is Texas has elected judges, but it's not easy to vote out an incumbent judge. Judges aren't allowed to spend hardly anything on their judicial campaigns, and what judges can actually say is limited, and so voting them out is not a simple thing to do at all. No, I honestly, I don't know. Because you're trying the legislative approach on some of these issues, and you're running into resistance from people who should be 100% on your side.
This is the easiest moral question for a Republican, at least, right?
Right, a Republican man, especially.
Should be easy.
Not to break it down to gender, but this is a Republican man issue in a lot of ways.
And I guess that's what was going through my head when I started this, was like, okay, the courts are this bad. We need to take away the discretion of the courts through some new laws,
Yeah.
Let me tell you how bad it is in Texas too. Like, the family courts have all these weird exceptions in the rules of civil procedure. Some of them are statutorily prescribed. One of them is absolutely bizarre. You cannot challenge jurisdiction of a family court action until after final verdict.
What? What a wild. That doesn't make any sense.
Isn't that insane? Isn't that insane? I have a friend who had a case illegally removed from one county to the other, and he's not allowed to challenge jurisdiction until after he goes through a $200,000 trial.
Yeah, that's crazy. That should be resolved at the beginning.
This is the family court lawyers here lobbying the legislature to get all these special exemptions.
Right, because a family court lawyer doesn't want to mess with a jurisdictional issue when they could make a bunch of money first.
That's right. That's right. And they'll move it to where they think that for this particular case they can get a friendly judge.
Yeah. Question: Have you ever worked at all with Brian Hughes in the Senate down there?
Yes,
the Texas
yes, Senate? I have. He's a good guy.
He's the only Texas congressman I've met, and I talked with him for a couple hours, and it was a great chat. But so I was kind of curious where he stood.
Did you talk to him about family law issues or?
No. It was completely different setting. So I wasn't talking about any major issues. We were just literally having a conversation, getting to know each other.
He was him and Bob Hall, Senator Bob Hall, are the reasons that we got the bills to ban sex change surgeries passed in the Senate. And he's the man that did that. He actually drafted the best bill. It didn't make it to the House, but it was absolutely the best bill of the session for that. His bill accounted for something that no other bill did. So when my son, let's say that she takes my son to go to say to be chemically castrated,
right,
on Lupron, Texas considers that medical child support, and I have to pay for it.
That's insane.
If he has a sex change surgery, they're going to make me pay for it.
Now, to be clear, there's an order saying she can't do that.
That's correct.
Right. But without permission, is it from you on that one? Is that like the one right that you have?
Of both parents, yeah. But how long do you think that's going to last?
Well, my question...
They took away all my parental rights. How long is that one going to last?
My question was literally, what if she just does it, though? Like,
there'd be no repercussions to her if she did it.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, the court would say... they might take away her rights. They might, but her argument would be simple, right? No, the courts have recognized that this is the affirming course of care for my son. How could you do that? My Jeff has he has no medical rights. He has no medical notification rights.
Right.
And
she doesn't even tell me about it.
Yeah, that's my concern in all this is that she would just do it. And then you wouldn't find out for forever. And then the courts would be like, well, whatever, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, this is just insane that, fathers have to pay for the sexual mutilation of their own children under the current laws.
Yeah. That's
how bad the laws are. I mean, it's just another example of how bad the laws are. Here's one, if you're religious at all, you're in a Christian home, you're raising your children as Christians. There's absolutely nothing if a woman files for divorce, gets primary custody, she could just convert your children to Islam or Buddhism or whatever she wants. There's just nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's
you are not secure in your posterity if you have children with a woman that way. You can't do that. You cannot do that anymore.
Yeah, it's wild, man. The problem that I have is I've been talking about, and this is largely based on Minnesota and other states that have really moved away from some of this stuff, is that in many places, family courts are more fair to dads now than they have been in a while. But yes. Then I hear stories like Michael Long's story. I hear your story. I hear what's going on down in Texas. And it's like, well, what the hell is happening there? Like, why? Yeah, in Minnesota, it used to be something like, 99% of custody cases would go to moms. Then it was 85%. They're actually trying to push towards, somewhere closer to probably a 60-40 split just based on the way people conduct their households, but they're not actually supposed to take gender into account in any of their rulings. And there's affirmative laws on that. And there's ways to actually challenge these things in court in Minnesota. But then I hear about Texas and I'm like, what the hell is happening? Like, why
can't challenge temporary orders here? I mean, you can't challenge anything almost that the district courts do. I mean, there's just no way around it. And these weird exceptions for family court are just insane. They just passed a law saying that if you remove a case from family court to federal court, if you try to remove it, the district judge can fine you for a frivolous removal. And
yeah.
I testified against this bill, and I said, you're basically saying that the district judge can fine people for acts that occur in a federal courtroom of which he's not even aware, and for which the federal judge hasn't determined that there's a need for contempt. But it's just like this thing that the family law lobby in Texas is very, very strong.
Yeah, and it's again, it really depends on who you have kind of, like you said, lobbying for this stuff, because the family law is it's the type of law other lawyers don't want to do because it's ugly and that they don't do it. And it has special rules, so they don't learn them, right. And they just let them go. And if you have family law judges and family law lawyers who get into nice, comfy working relationships and building a little club, then breaking into that it's nigh impossible. It's a mess. Okay, we've got let's see. Mr. Obi-Wan 2020 says this whole situation is absolutely infuriating. Good thoughts and prayers from Alaska, Jeff.
Thank you.
Kikagazumi says, do you have a referral for a good employer conflict lawyer in or near Portland? My work is trying to make me take the clot shot, and I want to explore my legal options. I don't know if I have anyone up in Portland specifically, but send me an email, man, and I can reach out to see if anybody in my network does. Mr. Obi-Wan 2020 says, this is a key reason why, if you think the situation is disgusting, get involved with your state laws and legislators. If all you care about is the president, this is what happens. Fabian Torres says, I'm custodial guardian, and I fear going for child support on his mother may risk that. It's scary as a father in Texas. Have proof and everything that I need just the fear of losing my son is what's scary. She only pays $50 to the state. Yeah. Well, that's at the end of the day, right? Like that's, you mentioned this earlier. You got the law passed, but all it cost you was your parental rights.
Yeah, that's right. And they're willing to play that game in family court. Just for speaking out and violating a gag order, they took my kids away from me, straight up.
Which is insane. That should never be grounds for the deprivation.
No, it's not. But their discretion is completely unlimited. That needs to end too. We need to take away their discretion. I think we actually need something like a citizens review board, like we have for police, over family court judgments. And you can appeal to like a citizens review board and they can see if it seems justified.
Well, I mean, the first step is just transparency in the family courts.
Yes.
I mean, because let's be real. When your case was public and when Michael Long's case was public, both of you were winning.
Yes. I
mean, it's and then they gag order the parties, they seal the case, and then suddenly they're able to
do whatever
without and they don't have to face the public outcry. And Michael's case is this very dramatic thing about potential sexual assault. It's very gut wrenching. And then your case involves a different kind of sexual abuse, right? This gender abuse that's going on. And so the public has a sentiment about it, and they say, and the judges feel it, and they feel it because, okay. So I was explaining to my buddy in Texas your case, and I was like, here's how big his case is. When one of the orders came down, Governor Abbott actually tweeted out that this order is bullshit and that he was going to have his attorney general look into it. Like your case was big enough to have the governor of Texas use profanity on Twitter, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody seems to know how to rein in these crazy judges. How can we have crafted a political system where we can't rein in these tyrants? Like, I just don't get how that error creeped into the design of these constitutions.
I think it's based in part on the idea of the separation of powers. Like, oh, you know, the governor doesn't want to overstep on the judiciary, and the legislature doesn't. Well, and because, you know, the governor needs a judiciary also, right? Like Abbott right now needs a judiciary on a ton of things. He's getting some very favorable rulings from the Supreme Court, but if he tried to step in and started clamping down on you know, family court judges or district court judges from the governor's office, it'd be a question of, well, would the Supreme Court even hear his case anymore? Like, would they do it?
Believe me, I know. I mean, there are political consequences to these things. And we still have this view of like judges as people we can't criticize.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to criticize. And I can't tell you how many times like I've run into people that say things like, oh my gosh, I read that you were accused of marital fraud. And I'm like, do you believe divorce filings? Like, do you believe family court rulings? Like, really?
It's almost like you've got two people who have a big issue between them and might be willing to cast the other one in the least favorable light. Like that might be happening. Yes. No, whenever I talk to people about judges, I'm like, it's just some naked guy under a robe. Like it's just any other idiot. And the weird thing is most of them are lawyers. Not that that's special, but they don't even have to be. They're elected judges don't have to be lawyers. Now, most of them are, but look, I've met a ton of lawyers in my life. Most of them are garbage people.
Right. Right.
And that's the crazy question. It's like, well, you know, a judge is usually a lawyer, right? Do you trust lawyers? Well, no, lawyers are garbage. Why do you trust judges? My buddy calls them failed lawyers because no good lawyer would have taken the pay cut, he says.
Right. That's right. That's right. So, I mean, we know that we do have some good ones. There's a guy named Jim Johnson down here where I'm at. I mean, this guy invites the public to come see important trials. Have you ever heard of that?
You know, there's one other judge that had something similar. This is in Michigan. It was Judge Jeffrey Middleton.
Gotcha.
And it was because Michigan Supreme Court said put all hearings up on Zoom so they're publicly accessible. And so he was doing that. And then, there were some viral clips and stuff from some funny things that happened. One guy, pardon my English, but his Zoom name, his sister set up a Zoom account before court and put in a prank name for him. It was Buttfucker 3000. Oh, no. So he shows up to court and the judge is like, you want to talk to me about that?
Oh my goodness.
But so that happens. And then the Michigan Supreme Court tried to they're like, oh, you need to shut down the broadcast of these things. And so he did one final YouTube video talking about how he believes in transparency of the courts. And he thinks it's a really, really good thing. And then the next, 1 or 2 days later, the Michigan Supreme Court sent a clarification to him like, oh no, we don't want you to actually shut it down. We're not actually trying to have non-transparent courts. So he stood up using the public platform and actually got meaningful change. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's
going to take that. And, Jim Johnson here is he's like a model judge. I mean, if there's some even arcane, there was this one contract dispute between like a laundromat partnership.
Sure.
And he said, first of all, you may not be interested in laundromats, but as a judge, this is a very interesting case, blah, blah, blah. He said, but why you should be interested in it and why you should come watch final arguments and be here for the jury verdict is that this is over an important issue in contract law that will affect farmers in this county.
Right.
And you need to come see how precedent is being set and what we're doing here. And he does things like that. He informs us of important cases that are important for the community, and we get to go see justice administered and see if it's being done the way we want it.
I think what needs to happen.
I would love to see a family court run that way. I've never even heard of it.
I think what needs to happen is, well, guys like you, who are out there talking to legislators and stuff. I think we've got to get the Supreme Court. I mean, they're elected. We've got to get them on board with.
They have the ability to supervise every court in Texas, and they're not doing their job. They are not doing their job in family courts. So I had dinner. This is a while back. This is like 5 years ago. I was at a donor dinner, and there were 3 Supreme Court justices sitting at the table I was at, and I brought up family court. All 3 of them said, "Oh my God, we know the problems in family court. We absolutely know the problems. And we just never get cases because people don't appeal them." And I'm like, people can't afford to appeal them, number one. And I said, what about your right to supervise the courts? Why aren't you using that? And they just sort of looked away and uncomfortably didn't talk about it.
Yeah, because it would be hard. They're doing really important work of writing and publishing decisions.
Yes, I know. I mean, they'd actually have to go, wow, this judge committed 2 felonies on the bench. Maybe we should sanction him. Right?
Yeah. Like Ray Wheelis, right? He distributes this he's distributing children's medical records and case records in a case. And while that might be okay for a normal citizen to do, as long as the records are public at the time, a judge actually isn't a normal citizen. They don't have free speech. They're not allowed to do those things. And, I have heard through the grapevine that Ray Wheelis may have actually been disciplined through that, but I don't think that's sufficient. I think
he should be in jail for that.
Well, he should be in jail, and the punishment that he suffered should be public. Yes. This is the thing. The light is the disinfectant in all of this to me. Yeah. The family courts need to be transparent. We need to get judges.
Judges' discipline here is not. Everything in the discipline system for judges is sealed. Yeah. It needs to. The voters don't know that the judge they're voting for has been punished.
Which is insane.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I've got to run here in about 3 minutes.
Okay, let me grab a couple. Let's see. I've got one chat here that was 100% for you. This is from Cal Clay. He says, question for Mr. Younger.
Yes.
If you manage to keep James from being abused by his mother in this way, and despite everything that follows, turns into a responsible, smart young man, but comes home with a boyfriend, would you be happy for him or believe you never won?
I would not be happy for him. I think that I'm a Christian, so I think that's an immoral activity. The orientation itself isn't immoral, but the sexual acts are. And I would encourage him to adopt a Christian perspective and seriously consider either being celibate or trying to reframe his sexual desires. I do not believe people are born gay. If you try to find scientific evidence that people are born gay, you'll find that there is exactly zero evidence that people are born gay. And people have been looking for this evidence. Billions and billions of dollars have been spent trying to find the gay gene, and they can't find it. People are not born gay. Sexual orientation is something that can change. The prison studies prove that. So that's how I would deal with that. I would tell them the truth.
No, I fully agree with that. I think my libertarian sort of bent says if other people want to make that choice and engage in that lifestyle, I'm not going to stop them. I don't really care. But do I think that do I think it's an inherent trait? No. And 2, do I think that it's the acceptable moral choice? No.
That's right. And should it be illegal? No, it should not be illegal.
Right. But the government shouldn't have anything to do with this stuff.
Legal and moral are 2 different things. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. And that's what, that was kind of tough because Minnesota had the gay marriage thing while I was going through law school, and
Yes.
shockingly, in law school, there's a bunch of gay law students, right? And so,
Right.
and they're nice, and you develop nice relationships with them or whatever. But one of them reached out to me, very genuinely, said, "Hey, how are you voting on this?" And I said, "Well, I'm voting against it." And he said, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, if the government's going to ask me what my definition of marriage is, I'm going to tell them."
Right.
And I'm sorry, but I said my view on marriage is so conservative that it's ridiculous to most people. But I don't think a marriage is a marriage without Christianity involved, without God. So, and it's like, so why would I say anything other than that? And I was like, I include that with atheists who have marriage. They can have a great relationship, and that's fine. But I don't view it that way. I wish them nothing but the best. But that answer was really tough for them. And it's like, here's why. I said, but my solution is better. Government shouldn't be involved in this question at all. There's no purpose to it, to me.
Yeah, it should be private contracts. So, for example, if you're Catholic, you should be able to. You can specify the jurisdiction that can handle disputes under that contract, right?
Right.
You could say all disputes in this marriage contract will be handled by Roman Catholic canon law courts.
I actually had
Catholic canon law. Why can't we do that? Why can't we specify things like that?
I had a proposal or an idea a long time ago when I was younger, just going into law school, that I thought it would be great to create a Christian arbitration board that. Because, there's the Bible verse, a brother will not sue his brother. You go and you talk to them first, then you bring wise counsel with you. And so my idea was, well, let's provide the wise counsel. They can be legally trained, or and then you'll have people with legal training sitting in like a Supreme Court sort of style. And then you'll also have ministry input. And then you'll resolve disputes, not just marriage disputes, but all disputes that arise within churches. They could bring in this board. That was the idea. But the one thing that forecloses that in the family court specifically is there is no way to put an arbitration clause into a marriage contract. No, every other contract you can.
Yeah, there's no way to do it. The government completely determines the terms of that contract, man. And to the point where if a district judge doesn't like your prenup, they don't have to follow it either. Like, the prenups are no protection at all if you get a judge that doesn't want you to have one. So, but we ought to, like any other contract, a Muslim could say, look, it'll be settled in a Sharia court. An atheist will say, I'm going to go to the Atlas Society and we're going to have a democratic presentation to the Atlas Society, or whatever it is that an objectivist would do, or whatever. You should be able, or you could even say, I want to adjudicate it under the statutes of the state of Texas. That's what you do.
Like everything else, the government should be the fallback option of last resort.
That's right.
You should have the option to choose to engage in something else with the willing participation of the other person. You make an agreement, you're bound by that agreement. Yeah. And that's it. Real quick, Juan says, has your guest requested a hearing de novo? I mean, there's not much to answer to that. You can't just request a hearing de novo.
Yeah, people think it's like traffic court. You sort of appeal up to the county level. It doesn't work that way in family court.
Yeah, in family court, you have to have some sort of change of circumstances that would allow you to justify a thing. That tends to involve a massive change in income, a change in location of one of the parents, something like that. Something that would interfere with the current order of things is the best way to describe a change of circumstance. And it's not easy to find, especially when the court doesn't want to find one.
That's right.
So. Well, man, you have stayed a long time, and I know you have to go, so I really appreciate the chat. And
I hope it was informative for your listeners and your audience.
Well, I think it was infuriating for them for sure.
Is there any burning question that you have, or that your audience has? That one last question that
I'm looking for real quickly to see if there's anything. Hold on, I'm skimming. Let's see. A lot of these are comments. So, I mean, I've got plenty of comments. Let's close on this one. I think this one will be a good one to close on. Crusader Saracen says, I am praying for your son, Mr. Younger, and for you as well. God be with you. You too, Nick, I guess. So
thank you. Thank you.
That's
my son's names are James and Jude. I really appreciate your prayers for their protection.
Yeah, it's I'm really sorry to hear about your situation. You seem though to be a guy with a head squarely on his shoulders, and I really do hope to get a better resolution at some point. And you know, I'm glad to know that the one silver lining in this cloud is that you're out there fighting, because you seem like a really sharp guy.
I am going to fight, and I'm not going to stop fighting. And if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging, and I guarantee I'll land some blows on the way down.
Well, Godspeed, man. If there's if you ever want to come chat about any issues, please let me know, because I think a lot of people are asking, is this guy a lawyer? And it's like, well, no, but you've been in the family law system long enough to be a freaking expert on it.
Yes, I have. So. I've been in so many trials. I mean, you don't understand. Like, I do 30 or 40 hearings a year. Evidentiary hearings.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, sometimes I'm doing 4 or 5 a month. It's ridiculous.
That's more than a lot of attorneys.
If you go and look at the case history, it's over 100 pages long when you print it out. That's how much she's filed against me. So
yeah. Well, man, I appreciate it, and I'll let you exit out. Thanks a bunch. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. It was nice being here.
Peace. All right, guys. We'll finish up the chats here. That was a crazy interview, right? That was really informative. His story is, I'm still in disbelief of it. I'm still in disbelief of his story, not because I don't believe him, but because it's so messed up. It is so messed up that, you know, you never want to see this story happen. Yokohuna, I don't know what his proclivity was, because he talked about balls and strikes. I didn't know if that was the same thing. Let's see. Nozaku says, your situation is a crime, sir. Sorry, he's already gone. Please consider backing The Embrace, a story written by a father in a similar situation. No matter how early you are, you will always be gay with balls on your futa. No balls, gang. Rise up. Oh, thank you. Thank you for waiting for that. I really appreciate it on these types of interviews. That was, you know, I do appreciate the deference there. Thank you. Will I please focus my camera? Yeah, it's weird when I need to get I need to get a Bluetooth thing to focus my camera, or a wireless thing to do it, because it doesn't want to do it here. Okay, let's start reading through these chats, and we will wrap up. And then I might be done early tonight. I don't know. So I did a stream on Locals today, but it was weird. I don't think the notification went out. And it was, the whole thing was glitchy. So I don't know if there was some issue there. I might pop on Locals. I don't know if I'm going to do Twitch. I'm really tired tonight, so we'll see. I've been dragging this whole week. Okay. Timothy Reaper says, when told that he could be anything he wanted when he grew up, my little cousin said he wanted to be a grasshopper. There's a reason why we don't let little kids make big decisions. Crusader Saracen read that one. Bad Dragonite says, hey, Nick, it was my birthday yesterday. I actually managed a day off for it on subject. The teachers and school staff being in on the abuse of the kid in Texas, of all places, just further shows how cancerous public schools could be. Oh, get your kids out of public schools. Get your kids out of public schools. I don't know what else to say, so I'll just be direct. Get your kids out of public schools immediately. Get them out. There is no reason to have them in there. It's awful. Timothy Reaper says, just think The younger and long cases are the ones we hear about. How much crap has gone under the radar? Someone called Project Veritas to investigate Texas family courts. That could be pretty interesting, but it's hard to. You got to get a whistleblower from inside the court system. I think you got to get a clerk. You got to get a judge. You're not going to get a judge. You got to get a clerk, and they're risking their legal careers for the rest of their lives. That's the other problem. Oh, damn. I can't see who sent this one. 1 second. Let's see if this stupid thing is working tonight. Please? Why are you not working? Hold on. Let me try it in this other browser. See if that works. I know this is super riveting when I'm looking for something. So I got a bone to pick with you. So the YouTube studio is just not going to work anymore. Mother. Hold on. I got a beef with you guys. So I did a video right before this stream. It's unlisted still at the moment. It was but I sent it to the people who are waiting early for the show. And I also, I posted it on locals and I posted it for channel members. And it's a joke. It's a joke. But I have no faith in you people. And yes, I mean you people, to take the joke anymore. Because the joke was, it was a video. I did a video and it was Matt Walsh talking at the Nashville School Board. Matt Walsh is there. He's dropping some facts on COVID. Okay. And so I said, well, I had to do some light editing of the video because of YouTube's policies on what you can say on COVID. And the joke is the video is like 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. Like, so we're going to just watch it, see if you can find the edit. And I press play and it's silent. I have the whole thing muted, right? And I get so many people like boomered the audio. I'm like, that's the joke. That's the joke. What did I do to deserve this? And it's not like this joke existed in a vacuum. There were like 7 minutes of commentary about how it would be ridiculous if YouTube didn't let us talk about it at all. And if we had to edit the whole thing, that wouldn't be free speech. That would be absurd. Like, that's the joke. Oh my God. Okay. Who sent in this early chat? That's what I got to find. There it is. It's from Richard Grubber. Grubber says, Thai-owned Asian fusion joint opened up by work, and I tried their donuts. I can see what you're on about regarding Vietnamese donuts. I hope you had a good flat fuck Friday. I don't know what that is, but yes. No, I didn't. Again, no one got my joke. No one got my joke. A bunch of other stuff was wrong. Okay, so anyway, Chode motherfucker 69 says it's 2 p.m. Brisbane time and my drunk arse is here listening to you. Chambers of my heart says, hey Jeff, I'm not able to really be here tonight, so good luck. Nick has a really cool dude, and thank you so much, Nick. It means a lot. No, I was happy to talk to him. Ascended President Not So Handsome Jack says, sorry to hear how much more fucked your situation is, Jeff. May by some grace of God, something good come your way. And Dave Tigit says, what is going on with James's twin? I think he answered that. He talked about Jude a little bit, but it's the same. It's the same scenario. I mean, both kids. He lost rights to both kids, but there's not the gender issue is not part of Jude's issue. Dud Summon says, in 10 to 20 years' time, when 80% of these poor people come to resent their mutilation, I hope these authorities are all made accountable. Almond John 1 says, wait, did Jeff say he took a shower with his kids? Yeah, he did. Base Crocodile says, this is a no political solution stream tonight, boys. Base Crocodile also says, what they're suggesting is no less immoral than killing a pedophile. Probably more moral. I say send the judges into general population in prison. Based. Vienticus Prime says, going to point out West Virginia again. The West Virginia Association of Family Court Judges filed an amicus brief and is trying to get the prosecutor fired. Search Goldston. Okay. TVTX89 says, Nick giving Project Veritas his info to Jeff so they can expose these judges, lawyers, and counselors. This is absurd. Again, the hard part with Veritas is they like to have insiders, and getting someone to talk from inside is really, really difficult. Malik Foxton says, the Texas child support issue reminds me of this homeless guy I see in Austin holding up a sign that simply said, my ex-wife had the better lawyer. The sad thing is you don't know if that's a joke or if that's the truth. Because like I saw a guy that said, he had like a crazy political sign, something like that. Yeah, my AC is on. I covered this yesterday. My AC is working. It's good. I Hate Yankee says, it's almost like someone sat down and then thought out exactly how to most thoroughly destroy the family. Yes. Cars in Depth says, Nick, you think you're immune from divorce, but you're not. I don't think I'm immune from divorce. I just have a relationship with my wife that I don't believe will end up in divorce. So there you go. 200 Watt Studio says, this is like a new version of Munchausen by proxy. Rad Bell says, I sympathize with this. Crush the family court. 200 Watt Studio says, judges are to the law as high school writing teachers are to authors. Stephen F says, bad as the courts are in Texas on this matter now, I've heard this man owns zero responsibility for his beta choice in women. Give that much. Dave T. Gitt says, go with God, Jeff, and hope for your sons. Ryan Wilson says, could Jeff share any recordings of his cases with Project Veritas? Probably. He probably could. I don't know if he wants to. I have no idea. I don't want to show turning my camera is a pain in the dick. No. Here's my AC remote. Does this work? 69 degrees right there. Let's see. 1.21 gigawatt says, hi, Nick. I just got home from work. Hooters. What did I miss? John Cook says, feel like you don't have to ask him balls or no balls. I'd assume given the circumstances, he'd be balls. I think so. Eldon Bainling says, let's go watch the Ava movies, though. I mean, I want to watch the Ava movies, but Flash is watching them. I don't know if he's still watching them. P.S. says, Minnesota employer might be mandating the medical procedure. Your thoughts? Look, man, some people have had luck with Barnes's letter. Barnes has produced a publicly available letter that they can provide to their employers to challenge the mandates. But right now, I think the law is on the side of employers whatchamacallit, at will employment states. So I don't know. I don't want it to be that way. I just think the law and the courts are on the side of mandates for vaccines. So it's a mess. Do you guys want to watch an Ava movie tonight? Is that what you want to do? You want to do that? Maybe we'll do that. I don't know. I want to watch them all in a row, but I can't do all of them in a row. I don't know when I could do all of them in a row, but maybe I could do one tonight or two tonight and then two tomorrow. Would that work? All right. We'll see. Shakaval says, it's a dumb joke. We wasted our limited lives. Good. It's not a dumb joke. It was a good joke. Philip Kozlowski says, I live it, and most days I can barely function. I miss my kid. Sorry to hear that, man. Jackson Kai says, next time, instead of no sound, just cut to Gundam so Flash will be too upset to call you a boomer. Human Crouton says, 10 years ago, single moms were proud about their son hitting a home run. Now they are proud of cutting off their son's YouTube censored. 200 Watt Studio says, please recommend 2 mid-level Scotch whiskeys. What's mid-level to you? Like $100? $100-ish? Ryan Conley, yeah, The Natural's on Prime. Great movie. Okay. Balmore 15 Darkest. Great Scotch. Great Scotch. $95, something like that. And then Lagavulin 16, 85, $90. Again, those are both great. I don't know what else to tell you. The Scotch the import tax on a Scotch is $20. So you're not going to have a mid-level Scotch at $20. So I don't know. 30 to 70 Monkey Shoulder is great. Trying to think of Scotches that are in that price range. Oh, Talisker. Not Talisker Storm, Talisker 10-year. So there's $1,000 Scotch whiskey. Dude, there are you can get $30,000 and $40,000 Scotches. Yeah. So that's why I never know what a mid-level is, because like even at your local liquor store, you can find $200 to $500 Scotches. So not that you should be buying them. That's like special occasions. Not Kirkland. Stop it. You stop that right now, 200 Watt Studio. Okay. Amateur Ant says they don't call the family court friend of the cunt for nothing. Rad Bell says, weirdly, I still want to get married even though it's a massive risk, but when is life not? Hey, you know what? I'm with you, man. Recommending marriage to other people is a tough thing to do from a legal standpoint, but I'm old-fashioned. And then finally, Eldon Bainling says, all I need to white pill after that stream is an Ava 1.11 watch party from you today. Make it happen, Nikki. Well, I guess we'll do Ava 1.11 and maybe 2.22. We'll see. We'll see. That's what we got for the night, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for doing the hang out with the show. Oh, wait. Facefucker 4000 says, Nick, how can so many people be so stupid as to not get the joke? Sub 80 IQ audience much. I don't they're actually not dumb. It's just their faith in me is so low that they figured that I messed up the joke. That's the problem. So anyway, yeah, we'll do some Ava. We can all stare at Ritsuko together or whatever. It'll be fun. Come over to twitch.tv/Ricada Law if you want to watch with us. And then I will see you guys. Like I said, my joke video, despite people not getting it, is probably going to go up tomorrow. I just have to do a thumbnail for it and release it. And then I might do a live stream over this weekend. I don't know yet. I don't know. So we'll see. I want to do some daytime. I want to do some more daytime streams. They're always fun. But I just got to find some good subject matter for it. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I'm not going to do, I tried to do the outro for you yesterday, and the Streamlabs or StreamYard screwed up the audio output. I don't know why. So I'm just going to end the show. There's not going to be anything else. I'm going to remove myself from the stream and end the broadcast. And that's it. So I'll catch you guys tomorrow. I hope you guys have a good night. All right. Peace. Peace.